Hi class, how's it going? I hope you had a nice weekend, and I did, and you have had a chance hopefully to look at the grades for your speeches of introduction. I thought for the most part they were very good. Just some tips for future presentations. Of course, make sure that you're making eye contact with the screen and that you can use some gestures like I am, and then your hands can go back down at your sides like that. And then of course have some nice expressiveness. So you don't be afraid to have facial expressions and to use more vocal variety and have a little bit of animation, okay? Animation, you're alive. That's what animated means. So that was just my general critique. But for the most part, I thought everyone did very well. So you can take a look at that. Hopefully you clicked on the written part of your speeches, and I did mark where I was able to your grammatical errors and all of that, punctuation errors, and put little notes in boxes. So I didn't know in your view if you have to scroll the thing over and click on the box so you can see the comments. But in any case, if you don't see that right away, kind of scroll over and you click on the boxes for those comments. But anyway, my long lost business class, have no fear, because the first part of both of your course, 1321 and 1315, kind of mirror each other. They overlap in some areas, but now we're going off in a different direction. And don't be dismayed if you look at the syllabus and freak out, or our calendar, I might say. It appears that we're extremely behind, but we're really not, because I jumped ahead for the delivery part. And of course, I'm just going to do the lectures and you can watch these. And I may also do some different assignments than the ones I posted. I'll keep you posted about that, because some of the things I normally do are just, I don't think, going to work in this sort of a virtual format. But in any case, don't worry, I'll keep you posted. So we will have some questions over this material that I'll probably ask you to answer for these lectures. So here we go. You do have a handout. So if you haven't had a chance to access that handout and print it out, that would be great if you could do so, or you can just listen, but the handout allows you to follow along. And this is Chapter 2, Organizations in the Workplace. Which one fits you best? And when you're looking at this chapter, class, don't get too bogged down, especially when you're reading the book. There's lots of theorists, there's lots of theories and all of that. We're going to break it down, and the reason why this is important to you is this is just kind of a guide. When you're thinking about what type of organization you'll be happy in and you'll feel productive in, this might be a guide. Because when we look at these types of organizations, you're going to find out that some of them really may fit your personality well, and some of them may not. And don't underestimate, if you're in a position or when in the future to kind of be a little bit picky about your career, don't underestimate how unhappy a job can make you. You know what I mean? We spend so many hours at work. You want to try to find something that makes you feel fulfilled, that's using your abilities, that kind of thing. If that's important to you, that may not, like I said, that may not be the way you approach a job. You may be like, look, man, I need the paycheck. That's it. I want to get in, do my work, get out, And so these are some of the things to keep in mind as we go through this chapter. Which one of these types of organizations is going to fit well for you? So that's how it's pertinent. And the first part, though, that we have to go over, because these organizations, and I call them the organizational models, they're kind of models for the way a company, a business, a college, okay, a high school, a classroom, any kind of organization. These are guides for the way that organization is set up. It's the way it runs. And if it affects everything from management style to how much feedback you get to give as an employee, or how much stake you have in the decision making of that company. So first, though, what also is majorly impacted is how communication works in the organization. And this becomes very important from anything from football teams, okay, to what's happening in our government right now with what I think I posed this to you in the last video. What types of, when we looked at the communication model, what types of communication issues have there been with COVID-19 and the messages that we've been receiving from our different levels of government and from our health officials regarding COVID-19. Those are all communication problems, and many of these communication issues have been impacted by the model or models that the administration is using and as an organization. So we'll look at that and think about football. I don't know if any of you have been watching football or you watch the NBA finals in basketball, but a lot of football, they're saying, hey man, the team needs to communicate better. They need to get the communication on these plays right. So you can kind of, as we go through these types of organization, you can kind of think like that. What happens when the communication breaks down for a sports team or for a pandemic? So let's talk about the different types of communication that we have in organizations in general. And there's two main types, and this is on your handout, and hopefully you'll read your chapters. There's informal communication and there's formal communication. Okay, so what's informal communication? That's the chit chat at work, right? That's you meet in the lunchroom and you talk about the weekend, or you talk about what so and so and so and so are doing, or you talk about, hey, I heard they might lay off people. So here's where it's just informal talk. There's not, it's not formal communication from managers, employees, etc. It's literally informal, may be friendly, may include a little gossip. Let's face it. Okay, it's going to have some gossip in it. But interestingly enough, informal communication actually indicates the health of the organization, because in a formal situation in front of your boss or your supervisor, right, you might be saying, oh, everything's going great with the new project or the new client, okay, because you want to save face, you want to put on a positive, you want to show the boss a positive outlook, whatever it may be. But then you get in the cafeteria with your colleagues or the lunchroom or wherever you hang out for your coffee break. And now it's like, oh man, I didn't want to tell him, but that client's kind of a pain and I'm not sure what we're going to do. And now here you hear the real story. So when there's a good grapevine, people in general are happier with the organization. And if managers are smart, a lot of times they tap into the grapevine to try to kind of figure out what's really going on. How do employees really feel about a new policy, etc.? So the grapevine, so it indicates the health. If you're in an organization that really represses the grapevine, so that sort of informal communication that people have, where they feel like they can talk about things openly among themselves, typically, if an organization squashes that grapevine, people are not satisfied. It's not a good place to work because you feel like you can't trust anybody. If I tell so-and-so this, are they going to snitch on me and then I'm going to get fired? And that's usually not a real pleasant place to work for. Think of different countries where the country doesn't have as much freedom of speech as ours theoretically does. Your own relatives, you can't even talk to your own relatives, because if you say something against the great leader, your own relative may turn you in, and because they're worried that someone else is going to turn them in if they don't turn you in, and then you get sent to prison or whatever. I mean, in some countries, it really, think of North Korea, it really is that bad. So you can almost think of an organization that squashes those kinds of informal communications as kind of being a more oppressive government, or sometimes functions like a more oppressive government. Anyway, I'm yammering, but I'm trying to give you some examples. But interestingly enough, even though the grapevine, those informal communications you might have at work, in the cafeteria, or on your break, even though they might carry a little gossip, like, hey, you think so and so is getting together with so and so? Do you think he or she's sleeping with the boss? These kinds of things. Okay, it's going to carry some rumors, but what the research has indicated is that the grapevine is actually 75 to 95% accurate. Okay, so that's sort of interesting. Klaus, I'm going to move this because it's bothering me. I see a shadow on my face, and I'm going to move this. This light's a little bit bright in my eyes, so you can shift around as well. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. And also, information also travels a lot faster when it's done through the grapevine. I still don't like this lighting. Okay. Anyway, it travels a lot faster. Informal communication is faster than think of it, than if the president or the CEO or your supervisor has to approve this email or has to approve this. It usually has to be approved, and then it takes some time to send out. So again, informal communication is generally faster. Also, people who use it regularly are more satisfied and committed to the organization. Again, when you feel like you're not in this oppressive state all the time, you can kind of share your thoughts, then you generally have more job satisfaction. And as I mentioned before, effective managers use the grapevine. And I can't resist. Do you all know that old song? It's a pretty old song. I heard it through the grapevine. Dun, dun, na, 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 na. Heard it through the grapevine. Anyway, so grapevine, kind of slang term for it's gossip and rumor. It's the rumor mill, and yet in an organization, it's not. It's 75 to 95% accurate. And I think this is a place, before I go into, let me give you a quick example of how the grapevine can help you. So this actually happened to two of my family members. I have a family member who used to was very high up in the FARA organization here in El Paso. I don't know if you all know anything about it, but the mall now, the fountains at FARA, that whole area used to be a huge manufacturing plant for FARA clothes. Okay, so that was what it used to be. That's why it's called the fountains at FARA. Well, anyway, so he worked for FARA. He was very high up in the organization, but lo and behold, what happened is another company came in and bought out FARA. Okay, and unfortunately, what happens when one company typically buys out another? Do they usually keep the same people in place? No. They usually come in, they reorganize, they fire everyone or let everybody go, and they put their own people in. It's usually a huge reorganization. Well, what this new company told the FARA employees was, hey man, if you agree to move to out of state to other locations, we'll relocate you and you get to keep your job. Oh, okay, but you've got to relocate. Well, and it happens to be my cousin's husband. Well, fortunately, because he was high up, and of course he was hooked in to the grapevine, he kind of heard or got a little information that led him to believe that maybe that wasn't what was going to happen. And he decided, you know what? I don't know. If I'm going to lose my job, I want to stay here in El Paso and not uproot my entire family. Well, it turns out that was a very good decision on his part, because guess what they did? They came in, they relocated everyone, and then once everybody was relocated, they let them go anyway. Can you imagine? Talk about business ethics. So these poor employees had completely uprooted their families and moved, thinking they were going to be able to keep their job with this new company. No, they let them go anyway. So fortunately for my cousin's husband, because he was hooked into the grapevine, he got some inkling. I don't know if he got it that straightforwardly, but he got some inkling that, this might not work out the way everybody thought. So it's a good idea to keep your ears peeled and kind of be tuned in. So that's informal communication. Then the other main type that we have is formal communication. And formal communication is just that. It's communication that flows along the official paths prescribed by the organization's chain of command or organizational chart. So almost every organization, it's usually like a little pyramid. The CEO's at the top, however many VPs, branch out here, and then under the VPs there's these folks, and under those folks there's more folks, and then you've got your workers or your employees that are at the very bottom. EPCC, okay, academia, any college is an organization. So EPCC has its own chain of command. You have Dr. Sarada, the president, at the top, and then we have various VPs like vice president of instruction, vice president of marketing. So we have different VPs, and then under them you have depending upon what VP they are, you have the deans at various campuses, and under the dean there's the coordinators, and then of course under the coordinators there's the faculty. So that's what we mean. What's the chain of command? And there's usually a protocol you follow. Like, for example, it's a little more flexible at EPCC, but typically I wouldn't go over my dean's head and talk to the VP without talking to my dean first. I wouldn't communicate with the vice president before I run it past my dean. See, so those are that's what you have to pay attention to. What are the formal channels of communication in your organization? Because you can get into trouble. That happened to my sister one time early on. It was an honest mistake. She wasn't trying to go over the guy's head. The vice president had come to her, and so they were talking about whatever it was and agreed upon it, but she didn't, in her email, she didn't copy her immediate supervisor. She just sent it to the VP. So the immediate supervisor felt left out and felt like she had gone over his head. So you have to be a little bit careful with things like that. But there's 3 different types of formal communication in an organization. So wake up, stay with me, class. There's downward communication, and that is communication or messages that flow from the top, so from supervisors and managers down to subordinates. So of course it's going to be things like policies, rules, what to do, all that kind of thing. Sick leave, the rules of the organization. They're telling you what to do from the top down, directions. So again, managers and supervisors, messages that flow from managers and supervisors down to subordinates. Then there's upward communication, which is the opposite. Messages from subordinates that go up to the managers and supervisors. So things about how the project's working, how the new floor plan is working if you work in retail, so upper management needs to know how certain policies are working or not working, or are there certain things going on that employees and customers are not happy with, for example, that need to be reported. And then the third type of one is called horizontal communication. And those are messages and information that flow horizontally to among people of the same rank. So people of the same rank. So it's flowing laterally. Again, if you picture that little chain of command. So those are the main types of communication that we talk about. Informal and formal, and then under formal, upward, downward, and horizontal. Okay? So here's a question for you, because that's sort of the setup. Now you know the basics of the different types of communication. The next question is, we're going to move on and we're going to look at these different types of organizational models. Each model, part of what defines each of these models is the type of communication, the direction of the communication that's favored. So think about that. How are each of these models defined by either formal communication, informal communication, and whether it's upward, downward, or horizontal primarily? So that's one question. Then, as we approach these models I'm about to talk about, it's kind of, I don't know if you all have read the chapter yet. Go, read chapter 2. But if you're if you're a student, if you're a high school student, college student, because I know I have some early college, high school people out there. But if you're an older person and you have held a job, you're probably going to understand this better than someone who hasn't really held a job before. So don't get bogged down. Here's the analogy. If you're having trouble grasping this stuff, think of your instructors, okay? As we go through these different models I'm about to go through, think of instructors that you've had in the past. What type, and think of your instructor, their personality, their management style, and in turn, how their style, how they structured their classroom, how that impacted the culture of that classroom and the environment. Okay, in the environment. So relate it to your instructors that you've had and your classroom and their classrooms, and I think you're going to be able to understand it a little bit better. So there's another concept question. So think of different instructors you've had in the past. How did your instructor's management style impact the culture and classroom environment of his or her class? And which type of these organizational models matched which instructor? It's kind of fun to try to figure it out. And some instructors may have used more than one, which is also typical right now. So what are the types of organizational models that we're going to talk about? So there's the traditional model, there's the human relations model, there's the human resources model, there's the systems contingency model, and finally there's the transformational or virtual model. Okay, so let's start with traditional. So we're going to break these down in detail. So traditional model, almost every organization utilizes some aspect of the traditional model. Okay, what is the focus? It focuses on structure and control. And again, class, as you go through this chapter, don't get too bogged down in the theorists. I included them. I included some of the main ones. In this one, it's Taylor, Weber, and Fayol. But what you really want to look at is the years. 1911, 1947, 1949. What had just happened in history when we kind of contextualize this? So we've gone through the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s. So that's happened. Think about the assembly line. Okay, everything is very boom, boom, boom. The assembly line, the labor is divided. It very succinctly, you have the workers along the assembly line that each have their own little job. What were the models? I mean, this was new. Remember, before everything was smaller businesses, right? But now the Industrial Revolution is what really gave rise to industry, to being able to mass produce products, if you remember some of your history here. Well, there weren't a lot of models then for how you manage this. Really the only other model we had at the time was the military. Okay, and if I have any of my my veterans out there or military people, you're going to recognize this model. Okay, you're going to recognize it. So the main focus of the traditional model is the boss is the boss, the employees are the employees. It's structure, control, efficiency. Okay, you follow orders, so to speak. The main focus is the scientific selection of employees and standardized tasks. What does that mean? I'm going to grab the book here because I'm going to need it. Okay. And I want you to think, they give you a really cool example here about workers that were shoveling material here, or the steel company. Okay. And what they had to do was they had to shovel coal. Okay. They had to shovel coal. So the scientific theory of organizing tasks to standardize them was, here's what they did. They actually figured out, what type of worker, weight, build, strength versus the shape of the shovel and how big the shovel was, and they standardized that. They gave everybody that size shovel and selected the type of worker that would get the job done. And once they did that, workers were issued shovels with a 21-pound capacity, given instructions on the most productive and least fatiguing way to shovel, and offered a pay incentive, okay, so a bonus for superior performance. So here were the results. The average volume of material moved per day soared from 16 tons a day to 59 tons a day. Handling costs went from 7.3 cents down to 3.2 cents. And it boosted the average pay from $1.15 to $1.88 per day. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I guess it adds up. And they were able to reduce its yard crew from more than 400 employees to 140 employees. From the employees' perspective, we don't like that, right? We don't want to get laid off. But from a business perspective, hey, it made it more efficient and it reduced costs for the business. So that's what we're talking about. And I have my own little example of that. Well, I have two examples. So when you're talking about the standardization of tasks to increase productivity, think of Subway. If we weren't here stuck in our homes, right, and we were actually on campus, a lot of us would probably be eating at Subway there in the cafeteria annex. And think of Subway. What do? You go, and the first person says, "What bread do you want?" And they get your bread. "What cheese do you want?" "Oh, pepper jack," whatever it is, they get your cheese. Then they pass your little sandwich to the next person. And now that person says, "What meat do you want? Would you like that heated, warmed, whatever it is?" And then they pass it to the next person and they put all the junk on it. And then they pass it to the cashier. This Subway sandwiches is a great example of the traditional model of that scientific organization of tasks and of the assembly line, right? Each person has their own little, and it's supposed to make it more efficient, right? Here's another example. I don't know if you can relate to shoveling coal, but how about scooping ice cream? I kid you not, a long time ago, back in the 80s, okay, my summer job in high school was I worked for Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors. And I don't know why this was the philosophy at the time, and I just thought it was nuts myself. I do not make a good scientific worker, especially when it comes to ice cream. I kid you not. We had the scooper, and at the time we had to weigh the scoops. I'm not kidding you. We had to scoop out the scoop of ice cream and put it on a scale. Can you imagine? I thank goodness that they got rid of that. I thought that was just so insulting to the customer. You're there and you're like, seriously? I'm already paying this much? Well, back then it wasn't. I think, gosh, when I was, I'm showing my age, class. I swear to God, when I was in well, we didn't have middle school, but basically middle school, 7th, 8th grade. Do you know that a scoop at Baskin Robbins was 25 cents? I'm not kidding you. 25 cents. And that was before they weighed them. But then when I worked there, we had to weigh the stupid scoops. I could never do it. I was just a terrible worker because someone would come in with their cute little kid and the little kid would want 2 scoops and the parent would say, no, no, that's too much, just 1 scoop. So of course, you know what I would do? I would make the scoop extra big. I'd weigh it, but I wouldn't correct it, you know? I'd make the scoop extra big and give it to the little kid. I think one day I was a little bit too obvious, and one of the persons said, I want her scoops. Oh, it's a good thing it was only a summer job. Who knows? Whoever owned that particular Baskin Robbins probably lost money the 2 months I was there. But anyway, that's another example of the scientific organization of tasks, was having to weigh those ice cream scoops. But fortunately, they got rid of it because I'm sure it was just insulting to the customers. I just thought it was not right. So that's an example. And another characteristic is bureaucratic control. You hear about bureaucracy, so it's usually a pretty good bureaucratic structure, what we call a tall organization. There's somebody at the top, there's a lot of VPs, the chain of command is very involved. There's a lot of middle people to go through to get to the top, A flat organization, no. You've got the one person at the top and then it stretches out. You don't have so much bureaucracy in between. Trying to pay your taxes, trying to get your relief check, it has to go through these all different levels of government, right? So we call it the bureaucracy. That's a downside sometimes of this type of model, but all organizations have it. We all have a chain of command. Anyway, what's the view of communication? See, we talked about those different types of communication. What defines the traditional model? Downward communication, right? The boss, most of the directions, most of the communication, the messages are coming from upper management, the boss, down. They don't want a lot of feedback from their employees. The boss is the boss, the employees are the employees. We tell you what to do, you do it, and if you do it well, we give you money. We give you a bonus. If you don't do it well, we're going to fire you. You get the stick. It's the carrot or the stick. You do what you're told, you do it well, you get the carrot. You don't do it well, you don't turn it in on time, boom, you're getting the stick, right? You're going to get fired or you're going to get a bad grade. Because again, go think of your instructors. Who are those instructors that you've had who are very, right? Their classroom is very structured. You know what to expect. They're usually pretty strict about deadlines, etc. But the good news, a lot of people love to work for a traditional structure because the expectations are clear. There's not a lot of chit chat and touchy-feely crap going on. You know that if you go into that teacher's classroom, you do your work, and you know what to expect. There's a lecture on Monday, there's an activity on Tuesday, there's vocabulary on Wednesday, there's a quiz on Thursday, and then on Friday we watch the documentary movie. Yeah, and every day it's like that. I mean, the next week, same thing. But I'm going to go in there. If I do this, this, and this, I'm making an A. If I don't do this and this and this, my grade's going down. Boom. If I don't turn it in on time, no matter what, she or he is taken off that 10 points. Boom. So you know what to expect. There's a lot to be said for that. Follow orders and stuff gets done. So that's, like I said, all of these models, they all have advantages and disadvantages. It goes back to which one do you think fits you? Which ones do you think you'll be most comfortable working in? So, mainly downward, the communication is work-related, it's formal, follows formal lines, and most often the communication is written. because we want to make sure that that language is clear, okay, and standardized. So not a lot of upward and horizontal. It's down. What are some sample organizations? I already gave you some. Subway. Well, one, because Baskin Robbins doesn't do that anymore, I don't think. But well, they don't weigh the scoops. I know that much. But UPS has a whole. They tell you about that in your book too. They have a whole kind of ritual that you have to go through. This is on page 43. It teaches drivers an astounding 340 steps for how to correctly deliver a package, such as how to load the truck, how to fasten their seatbelts, how to walk, and how to carry their keys, so that they're able to get out, get the package, drop it, boom, deliver, very efficient. They teach them these steps, UPS, so that your packages get delivered. So UPS is one. In-N-Out Burger, the IRS, of course, is another one. What do you expect in a traditional organization? Standardized rules and procedures, formal names, not a lot of chit-chat. So you typically don't say, hey, Lisa, what's going on, to your supervisor. You call them, Dean Hernandez, how are you doing? Or Vice President Hernandez, Mr. Gutierrez, Ms. Ontiveros, how are you today? It's gonna be more formal. You're told what I already told that, and the division of labor. Now, management style. This is a very important table. It's in your book. I like it because it really summarizes the models. This is on page 37, okay, and it's called Manager's Talk. Views from a traditional manager. So I'm going to hit you with this. So pretend that I'm Mrs. Manager, okay? Always remember to let employees know who is boss. If you are too friendly and get involved with their personal problems, they will take advantage of you and respect you less. Employees are basically lazy, and they will goof off if you let them. To keep employee respect, you must take control. For example, tardiness should never be tolerated, and in addition, for employees to feel secure, they need and want structure and control. Don't waste time asking for opinions. Let them know where they fit in the company's organizational chart and clarify the expected chain of command. Tell them exactly how you want things done, and if structure and control are not enough, money is a certain motivator. For a bonus, employees will do almost anything. And there you have it. That's the traditional model. And again, class, you have to ask yourselves, where do you fit? I would absolutely, many people are happy. Like I said, that's great with that model. There's many advantages. I am miserable in that kind of model. I can do it, but no, miserable is too strong a word. That's not really true. Because I like it because it is structured. I know what to do, and if I follow the rules, I generally do quite well. But if it's too much, I don't think classroom, I can handle it. I don't know. Workplace, I think I would be pretty miserable. You can, speech and theater. Come on, drama major, speech and theater, touchy-feely, that's, yeah, I'm not going to do well in a really hardcore traditional structure. Although I could argue I need the structure so I don't, go all over the place. So, but that's an example. But other people, oh my God, we need the traditional model. Okay. And like I said, most workplaces have some aspect of that model. Now, let's get through one more. I don't want to make these lectures too long because I hope you're not already asleep. So we're going to go through one more model, and then I'm going to continue doing little short lectures on this to get through it. This isn't particularly short. It's 40 minutes, but you know what I mean. I'm not going to sit here and go 2 hours at once. So that's the traditional model. Now, and think of the military again, ROTC, our government. There's a lot of aspects of our government that follow that model. Here's the next one, though. So that we have the traditional, but the next model, as we get rolling and companies become more, we don't have as many smaller mom and pop businesses. Companies become more, we get rolling here a bit after the Industrial Revolution. We end up with the human relations model. The human relations model is very different in their philosophy from the traditional model. And the two theorists for the human relations model are Elton Mayo and Chester Barnard. And again, the focus of this model is on employee needs, so the needs of the employee, and tender, loving care. Woo, that's quite different from structure and control, is it not, class? Because here's what Mayo and Barnard argued. They argued that no, if you want to increase productivity at your organization, because the bottom line for business is the bottom line. So it's not just about structure and control and the scientific organization of tasks, and it's not even about the carrot and the stick. It's not even just about money or getting fired. It is about taking care of the social and psychological needs of your employees. What? Are you crazy? Historical context. Look at these dates. 1933, 1938. What was going on? The stock market crash, the Great Depression. People were down and out. It was hard to find jobs. Banks were taking back people's homes. Are you kidding me? So it was sort of this, the New Deal, right? The New Deal, FDR. That was the beginning of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? This was the beginning of a lot of our social programs to help people, like welfare, etc. Okay, the New Deal. So that was meant to help people get back on their feet after the Great Depression. So it's no surprise that this new model comes in too. So here's what they say. So the main focus is on the social and psychological needs of your employees. If your employees feel happy, if they feel like they have relationships at work, if they feel like their organization cares about them, like they're part of a family, they're part of a happy family, that's going to increase worker productivity. People are going to be more committed to that organization. They're going to be happier. Morale's going to be high, and you're going to be more productive. What's the theory? It doesn't always work out. But here's something interesting, class. So, what would you expect their view of communication to be? Would you expect it? I would first say, oh, well, it's going to be more horizontal, right? And oh, they're going to want to not hear from their employees, so we're going to have upward. Nope. Interestingly enough, the direction of communication for a human relations organization is still primarily downward. Although the grapevine is highly encouraged. There's a lot of informal stuff. This will be the type of company that, and the downward communication needs to be supportive. Okay, supportive. There's going to be a lot of things going on in a human relations type organization. Company picnics, sports events for people to meet up and play sports together after work, happy hours perhaps, little birthday cakes. You're going to know people's birthdays, so you're going to have a birthday cake for them, this kind of thing. It's kind of one big happy family, so that the employee feels like they're part of this family. They have relationships at work, friends, hopefully. Well, you never know, probably other kinds too, but in any case. So why does it say in our book the communication is primarily downward? Yes, the grapevine is encouraged. You do have a lot of informal. Think of your classrooms. Think of the classroom where you have had that instructor who's the human relations model. You come in, maybe the teacher encourages you to talk about your weekend, how you're feeling, that kind of thing. Think of the culture, think of the environment. Maybe there's like a lot of art things on the wall or some fun things that the classroom is decorated with. Maybe it's just the way the teacher interacts. What's the human relations instructor like? Maybe conversation among the students that does have to do with the work or the chapter or the lesson, whatever it is encouraged. It's not going to be the environment where if you speak out of turn, boom, you're going to get a demerit, like in the traditional that, no, oh, we're so glad to hear from you, Anthony, but let's hear from Susie. We want to know what she has to say today. Think of those types of classrooms. Okay, where everyone's friendly, it's a friendly atmosphere. What is the danger for the manager, for the instructor? If the instructor is too friendly, right? Sometimes students will take advantage of that instructor, right? So sometimes it's just human nature, or people get the wrong impression. So they'll take advantage of that instructor, him or her. And so that might explain why the communication is still primarily downward. Yes, I love you. It's such a nice, happy family, but you didn't turn in 3 assignments. Oh, you're still making an F. I'm sorry. It's like this. So you have to be a little careful there. What to expect? Friendly, fun, caring environment, happy employees and customers, first name basis, plenty of chit chat, and like I mentioned, company picnics, sporting events, birthdays, that kind of thing. What are some sample organizations? Southwest Airlines, the Container Store, and smaller family-owned businesses. We used to call them mom and pop stores, but family businesses that are small, where the people know their customers by name because it's a smaller business. So that's the human relations model. Think of Southwest Airlines. Now you guys, and of course it's hard to fly right now in the age of COVID. You may not have flown enough to know this, but Southwest Airlines versus American Airlines. Just even think of the uniforms. You can look them up, Google them. So Southwest Airlines, typically you can be in your khaki shorts, your little polo. It was much more relaxed prior to 9/11 when they're telling you to find the flotation device and how to exit the airplane in case it crashes and this and that. They would crack little jokes. They didn't do that after 9/11 so much. They may have returned to that, but I haven't heard it. But they used to be kind of fun and playful and laid back, a little more laid back, casual atmosphere for Southwest Airlines. American Airlines, you're in the navy blue uniforms. It's not quite so laid back, and they really never joked on those instructions. Anyway, so that's another example. Good old. I don't know if you've flown enough though to notice that. And yeah, and I already told you the historical context. So let's end with this. Here is the human relations model. Okay, here's the human relations model. I totally disagree with the traditional manager. Employees are more productive if they feel appreciated and content. You can't treat people like machines on an assembly line. Their social and psychological needs are important as well. We view our organization as one happy family and treat our employees with tender, loving care. Managers should call their employees by first names, be friendly, joke and laugh with them, and express sympathy with their personal problems. We show that we really care by celebrating birthdays and sponsoring company picnics and athletic events. Managers can gauge the happiness of employees by listening carefully to the grapevine. When conflicts do occur, we smooth over them or even ignore them if possible, because conflict can damage our friendly atmosphere and hamper employee productivity. So let's be creative. Okay. So two very different models. I'm going to end it there for right now because that's 50 minutes, but I will make another video lecture where we will continue talking about the human resources model, the systems contingency, and the final one, the transformational model. So, but like I said, think of your instructors, right? Which one can you think of in terms of the atmosphere of the classroom, the way it was set up was traditional? And then think of an instructor where you felt like it was a much different environment. They were more the human relations. And I think that's going to help you understand this material. And also, which one would you feel more comfortable in? Would you feel more comfortable in a traditional organizational model or human relations? Or neither, or maybe a little bit of both. There's 3 more. So take care, class. Hope you had a good weekend. It was very good for Cowboys fans. Can't believe it. Poor Dak. Poor Dak. We just had stuff like that happens. Like I said, this ongoing thing with COVID, I'll end with this. I did send you a link. My daughter, Megan, goes to UT Austin right now. Very proud of her. She's going into speech pathology. And she's online, but one of her instructors sent them this article, and I think I posted the link in your last announcement, that talks about our surge, how we're feeling during pandemic. It's based on some psychologists that have studied what happens to people when they go through traumatic events like hurricanes and things like that. Okay, so we're not going through a hurricane, but we are going through a pandemic. And rather than it being a tornado or a hurricane, it strikes and it's over, it's ongoing. And so she talks about the impact on us, on our productivity, and also some tips for how to handle it, to be easy, to maybe realize you're not going to be able to be as efficient as you once were. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was cool that one of her instructors sent it to her, so I also made it available to you. I hope you also liked the TED Talks, How to Make Stress Your Friend and How Body Language Shapes You. We'll kind of refer to those as we go along. But I think I've talked enough for one day. So, but just like good old Dak Prescott, compound fracture, ankle surgery, probably out for the rest of the year. Life happens. How are we going to deal with it? And I think sometimes, class, we really do have to acknowledge it's a shitty situation, I mean, you've got to acknowledge it, but then after you've sort of grieved, and we got to now figure out, okay, how am I going to move through this? How am I going to come out the other end? Are there opportunities here for something else that I wouldn't normally have? In the pandemic, maybe more opportunity to spend at home, maybe more opportunity to connect with family, or maybe more opportunity to connect with ourselves. Sometimes we're so freaking busy, you never have any time to yourself. Or maybe you have less time now because everybody's at home. I mean, I don't know, but where are the opportunities? Are there the opportunities to go out now and take a walk rather than going out to a restaurant like we used to? What are some of the new opportunities that might present themselves? Dak Prescott's going to have to find his way through it. My son, 16-year-old basketball player on the team at El Paso High, tore his ACL last year. It's here we are. but I think we have to balance the not going into denial and just being, oh yes, positive outlook on everything. I think we have to acknowledge and move through those stages to get to the positive outlook. How can we turn this thing around? Anyway, I will see you next time. So, traditional human relations, stay tuned for more. Take care, class. Happy Monday. Or Monday, as the case may be. Hopefully, but let's put a positive spin. The weather is gorgeous outside. I think we can agree to that. Except for it's a little windy today, but not right now. It is gorgeous. So enjoy the weather. Take care, class. See you again soon.